Hey everybody, welcome to another lesson of learning Japanese. Today we're going to be covering our last lesson in the Hazu series. So we're going to wrap up our Hazu series coverage by covering the specific topic of the negative form of the grammar pattern hazu desu, which means should be that or supposed to be that or reason to believe that. We're going to be covering the negative form of this. So same disclaimer as the previous video. If you haven't watched the first video in the Hazu series, you definitely should check that out because we established information in there that we are going to draw from in this video. And then also you should probably watch the second video too, which was the past tense form before moving on to this one, which is the negative form, just because there might be some stuff that we said in there that will be referenced here again. So when we want to use this grammar pattern and turn it into a negative form, we have two kind of like main approaches and maybe three, but the third one is kind of rare. So we actually covered the negative form of this grammar pattern in our first video to a very kind of basic extent, in which we covered the first approach, basically the simplest approach, wherein we just conjugate the word that we're using in the grammar pattern into the negative form. So we did that in the first video with adjectives, nouns, and verbs, and that didn't really change the meaning of the grammar pattern hazu desu at all, which means should be that or it's supposed to be that. All it did was add on the negative to the actual word used with the grammar pattern, so it would be supposed to be that, not this, or should be that, not this. And so it's pretty much the same general meaning. Now we're going to move on to our second approach to the negative form of this grammar pattern. That's where we change the construction from hazu desu or hazu da to hazu ga nai. And this new construction is going to change the meaning and kind of the implications enough to kind of almost consider this its own grammar pattern in and of itself. So translations for this new grammar pattern will be something along the lines of, or it's impossible that blank, or it's very highly unlikely that blank, or it cannot be blank, etc. And as you can see, the translations reflect our new implication that this definitely has a stronger sense of emphasis. You also might be finding this function or meaning familiar because this is very similar to the other grammar pattern, wake ga nai. We've covered wake ga nai before in a previous video lesson, and it pretty much has the same definitions. And in fact, these two grammar patterns are often interchangeable. Probably the one slight difference that they have is that the grammar pattern in focus in this video, hazu ga nai, implies that there's a logical reason behind your statement of there's no way that blank, or your denial, your outright denial of the thing used with the grammar pattern. Wake ga nai can kind of just be used to express your emotionality without logical reasoning. And also similarly to wake ga nai, hazu ga nai can also be seen being used in its variant form, such as hazu wa nai or hazu mo nai. Basically, that's just a little tidbit to throw in there just in case you see it in that form, but we won't go in that too much in this lesson. Okay, so now let's go through some example sentences using hazu ga nai to mean there's no way that blank, or it's impossible that blank, or it can't be blank, etc. So for our first line, we're going to keep it relatively simple. Our example is going to read, それが本当のはずがない. That's going to translate to, there's no way that's true. First up, we have the word sore, which means that. We have the particle ga to mark as the subject. We have the word honto, which is going to mean true. It's a noun. So we're using a noun with this grammar pattern hazu, which means we need the particle no or the phrasing de aru. We're going to go with no. So honto no hazu. And now we're not going to add des or da because we're using the hazu ga nai grammar pattern. So we add ga nai instead, and this will then translate to there's no way that blank. What is the blank? That's true. それが本当のはずがない. And that's going to translate to, once again, there's no way that that's true, or it can't be true. That example sentence didn't really have logical reasoning to why the speaker is expressing that outright denial of something. So for our next example sentence, we will provide that, and our line reads, 彼は入院したから明日の試合に参加するはずがない. This is going to translate to, he has been admitted to the hospital, so there's no way that he'll be able to participate in the game tomorrow. Let's break down the sentence bit by bit. First up, we have kare, which is going to translate to him or he. Mark him as the topic with the particle wa. He is going to perform the verb action of nyuin suru, which is the verbal noun that means to be admitted basically to a hospital. Poor guy. We are going to conjugate nyuin suru into the past form, so nyuin shita. Then we're going to add on the conjunction kara to mean because. So because he was admitted to the hospital, or since he was admitted to the hospital, that's going to be our logical reasoning for our second clause that has the grammar pattern hazu ga nai, which will express there's no way that's something. And so our no way thing is going to be participate in the match tomorrow. Ashita, which means tomorrow. Shiai, which means game or match. Particle ni, to mark the shiai as the thing to be participate in, because participate is the verbal noun that we're going to use, sanka suru. Suru is in its dictionary form. That's a plain form. We can use it with this grammar pattern. So we plug on hazu, then we plug on ganai. And that will of course mean something like impossible to participate in match tomorrow. Kare wa nyuin shita kara ashita no shiai ni sanka suru hazu ga nai. He was admitted to the hospital, so there's no way that he'll be able to participate in the match tomorrow, or it's impossible, or it cannot be that he'll be participating in the match tomorrow, something along those lines. Throw in another example sentence. Our line is going to be Majime na gakusei no Tanaka-san wa gakkou o sabotte iru hazu ga nai. This is going to translate to there's no way Tanaka, the serious student, is skipping school. Break down the sentence bit by bit. First up, we have the non-adjective majime, which means serious or diligent. It's going to be modifying the noun gakusei, which means student. So majime na gakusei, diligent student. This is going to be part of a noun of noun modification using Tanaka, the person's name, as the second noun. So this will be Tanaka, the diligent student, basically. Mark Tanaka as the topic of the sentence. And now we put on the verb that's going to be a part of the grammar pattern, hazu ga nai. So that will be, but first the direct object, gakkou, which means school. Mark it with the direct object particle o, and then the verb saboru, which means to skip. It's going to be in its te form plus the word iru to mean is skipping. So sabotte iru. Iru is a plain form verb, so we can use it with hazu. And so what we do is just plug on the wording hazu ga nai. That will be there's no way that. What is the that? Well, the that is that Tanaka is skipping school. Tanaka, the diligent student, is skipping school. Majime na gakusei no Tanaka-san wa gakkou o sabotte iru hazu ga nai. And so in that example sentence, we do kind of provide a logical reasoning for why he wouldn't be skipping school, because we modified him as with the clause that describes him as a diligent student. Okay, so those are a couple examples using hazu ga nai to mean that there's no way that blank, in which it's acting as basically a negative form of the grammar pattern hazu desu. And now we're just going to mention on the side that kind of third approach to use the negative form of the grammar pattern hazu desu. Seems that we can use hazu dewa nai, in which the word used with the grammar pattern is it's going to stay in its present tense. We don't have to conjugate that into the negative form, but we're going to use hazu dewa nai instead of hazu ga nai. This seems to be a lot more seldom. I think a reason behind that is because when we say dewa nai or dewa arimasen, that can often be confused not for the negative form of something, but whether you're just asking a question. And so most predominantly, this construction of a present tense word plus hazu dewa nai is going to be in the conjugation of past plain form. So instead of dewa nai, dewa nakatta. And so this is used to express that one wasn't supposed to do something, and you're expressing that feeling of regret or dissatisfaction, which is something that we covered in the previous video with the past form. And so a quick example, this would be the common phrasing of konna hazu janakatta no ni. And this will translate to something along the lines of it wasn't supposed to be this way, or it wasn't supposed to go this way. You can see that the word that we use with this grammar pattern is just simply konna, and this is basically just going to translate to this. Then the hazu janakatta is of course the casual form of hazu dewa nakatta. Then we add on that extra wording of no ni, which we talked a lot about in the previous video when we were talking about the past tense, to add that extra degree of oh dang, regret right there. And that would actually translate to, in English, something like, oh, it wasn't supposed to go this way, or how could it have gone this way? So yeah, that's something that is worth just pointing out on the side. And now one last thing that is also worth pointing out on the side is the use of double negative with this grammar pattern, in which we conjugate the word that we use with the grammar pattern to its negative form, plus the phrasing of hazu ga nai, and this forms a double negative. This is going to be a lot more common with verbs as opposed to adjectives and nouns, because when we're using double negatives with verbs, there's like a better distinction between the action and the expectation. I think it's the same case in English. You don't really use the nuance of double negatives unless you're talking about an action. Using it with adjectives and nouns is kind of more seldom, I think. Anyways, we're going to do a really quick example, and our line is going to be kare wa uso o sukanai hazu ga nai. And this is going to translate to there's no way that he would not lie. And so this would then kind of naturally turn into he's definitely lying or something like that. Break down the sentence bit by bit. Kare, he, particle wa, topic. We have the word uso, which means lie, direct object, to mark it as a direct object of the verb action that's supposed to come, which is the verb suku, which means basically to tell a lie. It's used with the word uso a lot. However, we're going to want it in its negative nai form, so sukanai. Then we add on the phrasing hazu ga nai for the extra negative, so that would be there's no way that, or it's impossible that he's not lying. Kare wa uso o sukanai hazu ga nai. And so yeah, this is a double negative that is possible with this grammar pattern, but isn't too common because Again, you can just kind of do the opposite and just use the positive form. Okay, so that's going to be our coverage of the negative form, or the multiple approaches to the negative form with the grammar pattern hazu, which will then translate to it's impossible that, or there's no way that, or if you're using the kind of first approach, it'll just be it's supposed to be that not this, or it should be not this. We also went a bit into how this differs from the wake ga nai grammar pattern and covered those pretty rare cases of double negative and the third approach of hazu da wa nai. And yeah, hopefully you learned how to use this grammar pattern now in its negative form and will be able to recognize it if you see it in everyday conversation. Okay, so that's going to wrap it up for this video. I hope you learned something and I hope you enjoyed your time doing so. If you'd like to express that, you can like the video, leave a comment below, or subscribe if you haven't already. If you'd like to support more of these video lessons or support more of these video lessons being created more often, or support more types of videos, please do consider checking out our Patreon page and consider becoming a patron there. Also included on the screen right now are, of course, a bunch of links on where to find and follow us elsewhere online, including our official website. And lastly, check out our Discord server. We've got a community of hundreds of people learning Japanese just there. So if you're looking for somebody to voice chat with just to practice speaking Japanese, or you have a quick question that needs a quick answer, or if you just want to talk about anime or music or manga or other Japanese things, learn Japanese.becauseofdreams.com/Discord. And with that, see you next time.